Hello, welcome to the DesignCast, where we talk about all things design. I'm Stephen Underwood, a student graphic designer and photographer from the UK. Every Friday we will bring you the latest design news in the world and answer your questions and even interview designers and the like right here. You can listen to us wherever you get your podcasts, or you can watch us on our YouTube channel, the DesignCast Podcast. So our main topic for today is Canva a bad design tool? So the short answer is no. The long answer, well, is maybe not so long, because Canva or any other design tool is not bad or good in a certain way. It's how you use it that makes it bad or good. So I'm using an example of Canva to start with. Now, I haven't had much experience with Canva, but if you don't know what it is, you probably will if you're a graphic designer watching this, possibly even a photographer. But if you don't know, Canva is a sort of free website. There is pro features you can pay for, but it's primarily a free website where you can design adverts, graphics, videos, and almost it gives me sort of PowerPoint vibes. But there is a lot of hatred, especially in the graphic design community, over Canva. And I can see why, because I think it's one of these tools. I'm not quite going to call it a software because it isn't, but I think it's one of those tools that tries to cover a niche that is sort of needed, but then at the same time it isn't. And it also, I can see why people get angry with this, is also because of the fact that it is slightly taking away that job of a graphic designer. And I think we're coming into a world more and more nowadays where jobs are getting taken away from people. So for example, you might work in a factory, but now it's all run by robots. Things like that. So I think I can see why people are angry, but the thing I really want to stress in today's episode is why you shouldn't be angry. Because it's not just Canva, there is many other softwares and tools out there that are free or cheaper or a one-time purchase or not as commonly used but can be good or useful. So I'm just going to list a few. So you've got Canva, which is sort of a mix, I'd say, of Illustrator and Photoshop, but on a very basic level if you're looking at it from an Adobe point of view. We have Procreate, that's £10 for a lifetime purchase. So it's like a drawing illustration app. It's probably a bit like Adobe Fresco if you're looking again from an Adobe perspective. You've got, there's a new software I keep seeing advertised called Calvary, I think it is. Similar to After Effects, I think. And that's just a few to name. There's Affinity Designer, which is again one-time purchase on most of things. And a lot of these softwares, or there's things like GIMP as well, similar to Photoshop. Now, I haven't used all of those. I've heard of most of them, but I haven't used them all. But the issue is, in the design community especially, is that people are too quick to judge other people's work because of the software they've used. So someone would share a piece of work they've done, let's say in Photoshop, and they say, "Oh, that's a great piece of work. I use Photoshop. I find it really useful." But at the end of the day, if that same person went to do that in Canva, the person would probably turn around and say, "Oh, I don't like that because you did that in Canva. I don't like Canva." But that's where it's wrong. Because it doesn't matter what tool you use, it's how you use it. Now, obviously, every tool and piece of software is different in its own way, so it will have slight differences. So, for example, again, I can't give big examples because I've not actually used Canva, but I don't know, let's say content-aware fill in Photoshop, which you may have used, sort of samples areas and fills it to sort of remove objects. I doubt that's something you can do in Canva, not that I've tried it. I don't think it's as much of a photo editor, but I'll just use this as an example. imagine like content aware fill. You've got it in Photoshop, but you've not got it in Canva, but you really need to use content aware fill. You're not going to use Canva to do it if it doesn't have that feature, if that makes sense. So it also sort of weighs up the scales of what features you need for certain projects, I think. Now, I personally have grown up and learnt the Adobe suite and quite a few of its softwares. I like the ecosystem it runs in, how you can transfer documents between softwares. Yes, there's a little bit of discrepancy. Yes, it's not perfect. Yes, it's a lot of money. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what tool you use as long as you use it well. So I know there's another tool that I'm going to come on to, and yes, it's not quite a software, it is a tool. It's called Photopea. Now again, if you've used Photoshop before, you've probably heard of this one and maybe even used it. Now I've actually used this a little bit occasionally when I've not had access to Photoshop, but there is a few issues with it. One of them being that it's a web browser, so it's not as optimized. Canva is more optimized for the web browser because it's not a heavily loaded piece of software, but Photopea, and I don't really know how they can get away with this legally, is almost a copy of Photoshop on the web for free, which is good. It reads Photoshop files, it reads PDFs, I think it reads Illustrator files as well, and I've used it a couple of times, and it's pretty much got every single feature Photoshop has in it, but on the web. It works fairly well, but I have occasionally had a few problems exporting things, saving things, adjusting things on it. It's not perfect, but I don't understand why it's needed. Which brings me back to my first point of people are too quick to judge what software you use, and these companies and people that make these softwares or tools cover a niche that isn't really needed. So I think at the end of the day, you have to sort of step back and look at what you actually need, not what you want. And I think that's a good moral to think about for everyday life, not just design or photography or video. Obviously things like video software, animation software, and even maybe even photo software, but mainly video and animation, maybe even music software as well, is probably a lot harder to come to free or web browser or cheaper app alternatives than something like Photoshop, because Photoshop is so widely known. Yes, there's softwares like Illustrator, Premiere Pro, After Effects are again widely known, but they probably don't have that much of a representation in the world that they can actually cover that basis. So I think also you have to be careful sometimes how you use different softwares and tools, because I'm currently working on a project. I can't show you any of it. You might have seen some of it if you follow me on my social media at stevie.graphics. I've been working on an animation, and I've designed the scenes in Illustrator and animated them in After Effects. Now the reason I'm currently using Adobe software is I get a free license with my education, which is great. And also I have sort of learnt and taught myself the softwares, so I'm better skilled in it. And I could tomorrow, if I wanted to, go and learn Canva. Not that that's as complex, or I don't know, again, some of them are quite similar to things like Photoshop, so you wouldn't necessarily have to relearn everything, because you already have a bit of a basis. And if you've got a good, decent technical understanding, you'll be fine. But yeah, I'm working on this animation using Illustrator to illustrate design and After Effects to animate it. Now the main reason I'm using those two softwares is not just because I have a free license for my education to use Adobe software, it's for ease of use. Because Illustrator, from personal experience, I've found the best digital illustrating software. Now there is things like Vectornator and things, I haven't dabbled in them too much, but I know they're there. But there is downfalls. So in After Effects, I can import my Illustrator document and animate every single layer. I probably, from my knowledge, can't do that in Vectornator. And there's probably not many other alternatives. And the reason I've got After Effects is because I can actually see all those layers and split them up, animate, and then I can add masks or mats to just layer up my animation. But that also makes another point of why do you have to choose a software over another software? It's sometimes because of the fact that there isn't another software there to use. So like I say, in Illustrator, I only really know of Vectornator. I think there might be a couple of others, but for certain things you want to use them for, there's not really an option all the time. So I think to finish this off, just choose a software or tool that you want to use, and not necessarily because you like it, because you need features on it, or because you use it well. And forget about money, forget about price, because that doesn't matter at this point. You want to make sure you choose the right software that fits your needs and that you can use well, because the better you can use it and it fits your needs, the better results you're going to get. One thing I will say about Canva though is I think it's got a very slick and clean, simple to understand user interface, which I think is also the niche it's trying to cover. It's trying to cover those people who don't want to spend out loads of money on a graphic designer or videographer or animator, or want to put a quick advert or slide together for something. And I think they want to do it on the cheap, which again I think is something that's coming into the world at the moment. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter, because if you're a graphic designer waiting for a client or you're not getting the work, don't worry about that, because those people can go off and use Canva, leave them to it. But if you need work, you'll be able to find it elsewhere eventually. But I think at the end of the day, just use the software that you feel comfortable in and that you get the best results from, and don't worry about what anyone else says. Just produce good results and you be you. So, thanks for tuning in, and don't forget you can visit our website www.thedesignCastpodcast.com, and also send your questions in to be answered at thedesignCastpodcast@gmail.com. That's thedesignCastpodcast@gmail.com. So thank you for listening or watching, and I'll see you in the next one.